Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Grain Market Blast. It is Monday, the 5th of May, all day. As usual, the wonderful, the magnificent, the glamorous Angie Setzer will be giving us a rapid roundup of the latest prices and flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I'll get legals out the way. Nothing discussed in this space session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or the glamorous Angie Setzer. How are you doing, my darling?
I am super. What holiday is
Wrestling.
it in the UK? I was going to say like Happy Cinco de Mayo, but I didn't want to like trump
Aye,
your
aye,
culture,
aye.
right? Like, how
This
rude.
is our May bank holiday, which this May coincides with the 80th anniversary celebrations of VE Day. So it's pomp and circumstance and pomp and ceremony, sorry, in London right now. So we've just had a wonderful flyby. We've had a load of veterans walking along. It's been a good day in London.
Look at you guys go. Congratulations. I'm happy
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
chose to be with me on your holiday.
of
So
course,
I appreciate that. As like
of
me
course.
on my holidays, I'm like, work? What's that? It's a four-letter word. We're not
Who is
doing
this
that.
man from London that keeps phoning me up on this day
Right?
when
That's just it. It is a
when I'm
holiday,
drinking?
sir. But anyway, happy Monday. Welcome to the Thunderdome. Welcome back. I am here. I am partially ready to party. Like I one half of me is like, let's freaking go. And the other
Yeah.
half of me is like, let's not and say we did. Which is always what my mother used to say to me anytime I was like, Mom, can we? And she'd say, let's not and say we did. Took me a long time to realize what that meant. But anyway, welcome to the Monday. Big news, obviously. First things first, trade. Though I feel like, and maybe you can correct me in this. Over the weekend, headline wise, news wise, development wise, not really much. Same
Yeah,
stuff,
I agree
different
with you
day.
there.
Yeah.
I think I think
Trump
for
did.
us, well, funny enough, I think one of the biggest things that this morning waking up, I'm surprisingly not hungover considering it's a bank holiday, so I don't know what's going on there. But
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. But no, it seems to be like one of the things that's hitting the news mostly on this side of the pond is Trump doing 100% tariffs on any movies not made in the US.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. That's a new
I
one,
think
right?
that that could be something that kind of annoys the right amount of people as well, because there's huge film like industry in the UK, Canada as well. It's huge like government support and tax credits and stuff that you get from these things. Like we got the famous Elstree Studios and stuff in the UK. I think that could be like a play that no one was expecting, but could have
yeah,
some quite serious. Well, at least like we've said, you push people to breaking, and you seem to get answers a lot more
yeah,
quicker. So to see
yeah.
what happens.
No, so that one kinda came out of left field, you could say, but not really, because he's buddies with there's a handful of, like, Christopher Walken, John
Oh
Voight,
yeah.
and another one, and so I'm like, "You're talking to my guy all wrong here." That's Christopher Walken, that's my Christopher Walken impression,
Oh
you're
God.
welcome,
All
you
right.
just thought
That's
he
the end
was
of the
here,
show.
didn't you?
That's the end of
He
the show.
wasn't.
Sorry.
It's not him, it's me. But anyway, so yeah, that is one of those things, 100% tariffs on films is a big one. We did see President Trump say that his administration is just speaking with China, representatives from China. He did add that he and Xi do not have plans to talk this week, but we'll see. Canada's new prime minister, fresh off his second election victory in like as many months, basically. Not quite. It'd have been a lot cooler if it would have been, but still, we'll round down and say it was. He is expected to travel to the White House to meet with Trump tomorrow. It's kind of a big deal because we did have some headlines over the weekend, from Mexico and Scheinbaum saying she did reject President Trump's push to bring troops into Mexican soil to help combat the drug trafficking and some of these other things. And so that'll be one of those big conversations we want to watch between Carney and Trump. It'll be their first, I think, face to face. Well, I know it is since he's been named the prime minister and they've had the election and all of these other things. But it's definitely going to be interesting because Trump kind of continues to throw out that 51st state thing. And Carney is definitely, he could almost say that his rise to power was fueled, based on some of the experts in politics that I've seen. His rise to power was kind of fueled by Trump coming into
Yeah.
play and all of these things. And so it'll be interesting to see the elbows up idea and yada yada. We will,
Can I ask a question on this?
yes,
So obviously
please.
from this side of
Hmm.
the pond, obviously, I appreciate that our news is slightly different. But I'm hearing, just seeing on Twitter and all stuff like that. I know you can't take that as a kind of a global kind of litmus test on what's actually going on. But still, but I'm seeing more and more headlines regarding just Alberta seceding to the US because and I'm like, hang on a second, is this even possible? But someone was saying that yeah, it technically is possible. So
Yeah,
I don't know. It seems very weird.
I'll have to ask my insiders, on the Canadian side of things how possible or what that looks like, but I'm sure, there's tons of different ways to go about it, and could you see it? Potentially. I think Alberta is kind of really I don't know, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna end up making someone mad, but we'll see. I'll have someone give me your take on it, and I'll ask my resident. I have a couple, Canadians that I always like to like, they're not just the representatives of the entire country, but I'm always like, "Okay, what is the reality of what you're
All
hearing?"
I know about
It
all I know about Alberta is it's very rich in energy, which is why I thought, oh, maybe there's something in
I
this.
think that's where Regina is, and that's all I know about Alberta, honestly.
God,
So, where you got, representatives from the EU are expected to present their package to the administration this week as well, phrasing Angie. And so they're going to come in. They're talking about increasing purchases of LNG, soybeans, and other agricultural products. So that'll be something we'll want to watch. But the question always is, is it going to be enough to satisfy the administration? And what is enough to satisfy the administration, enough to satisfy the bloc of countries
yeah,
and people coming together? There's apparently been a little bit of a hiccup with the UK, and so we'll see. Maybe it's just because they're on holiday today and everyone's like, what holiday is that? I don't know. But we'll
yeah,
see. Basically the one thing that was of interest that I thought, is during his conversation last night, President Trump basically said, listen, everyone's got about 2 to 3 weeks to negotiate before I'm just going to pick a rate for each country and that's what they're going to
yeah.
pay. And I'm like, didn't we do that once?
Well, do you know what? I'm glad you said that because I was sure we've already played that game.
I'm like, I mean, I know that like I was anyway. I get confused easily. I'm blonde for real, but yeah. So we're gonna do that all over again here in another couple 3 weeks, and then we'll see.
Spin the wheel, spin the
Right,
wheel.
exactly. I'm like, I don't know. But anyway, and then, if you thought it wasn't enough, if you were like, man, I'm really getting tired of learning where all of these countries are and their trade and all of these other things, guess what? You get to try to figure out geopolitics because over the weekend, we talked about Iran and the US and,
Yeah,
Trump kind of putting more pressure on Iran and the nuclear talks being suspended and some of these other things. And so then, of course, over the weekend, the Houthis out of Yemen launched another attack on Israel, basically just missed their main airport with a missile. And so obviously Israel's prime minister is like, yo, you guys are so screwed. He's vowing a massive response. And obviously the timing of the attack is what we would call less than ideal, because we have had Iran and the US going back and forth,
I think
there's hawkish
I think
voices. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, it's very important to say not only did Netanyahu kind of say, yeah, you guys are in trouble now, but he specifically mentioned the Iranians who back the Houthi rebels as well. So this I think that's what's worrying a lot of people. And also we heard today that funny enough, PIQ, we picked up a headline late last week where thousands of Israelis were getting sent their draft notices to say, like, they come back to the barracks. And what we have seen on top of the missile and the kind of the response to that is that Netanyahu is now planning to put forces into Gaza and take control indefinitely until the rest of the hostages released. Although I did hear just before we came on air that that's probably going to be on pause until Trump's visit or Netanyahu's visit. I can't remember
When
which
he's
one's going to
coming.
work.
Yeah. And so
Unless you right, I think then that's on pause. And I think, like you said, I think the timing is very interesting because obviously we know the Israelis are looking for a response. We've had a few US policymakers say, look, we're not going to ever succeed in talking with Iran. We know they're getting closer to, the critical mass for nuclear weapons and such like that. So I think there's, it feels like we're getting to the crunch point. I don't know which way it's going to go, but it feels like something's got to give at some point.
and there's definitely some, yeah, to be watched. President Trump did put out in like March that Iran is financing the Houthi rebels. Israel's kind of continuing to agree with that and saying that Iran's behind it. Israel is pushing the U.S. to destroy a lot of Iran's nuclear capabilities and basically saying like they've got to completely dismantle their nuclear program to make this work.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things there that need to be paid attention to, just simply because, you also have like when you start to take a look at it and you're just like, okay, you've got Israel and Iran, but then you also were looking at the Pakistan and India situation.
Yeah.
And then both of them, you're looking at, excuse me, India's defense minister saying that they are preparing a quote befitting reply to the terrorist attack that Pakistan says is not their fault. India says there were two Pakistani nationals. It is all of their fault. Pakistan says they will respond to any
Yeah.
attack by India with response. And
And
then
then,
what is most
and then
interesting, though,
But then on top
yes,
of and then on top of that, you got Modi today saying he's going to reach out to Putin and try and strengthen ties
I was
that way.
just gonna
It's
say,
like,
like, what's really super fun about it though is China supports Pakistan, calling them an
yeah,
ironclad friend. Russia is vowing to support India, with Putin planning to visit Modi soon. And so then you have China and Russia that are also talking about meeting Putin and Xi. And so it's just definitely honestly, if you are a geopolitical nerd, that's not even mentioning what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, or the fact that Romania's far right
yes,
won the first round of the election this weekend, which is huge because Romania was a major asset to Ukraine in the early days of the invasion. And this weekend's election winner is more of a MAGA, Trumpist style, is what they're saying, party, heavily influenced by the Make America Great Again movement, the push away from Ukraine to a certain extent. And this will be really super interesting in how it influences European Union decision making, in the region as a whole, because you've
yeah,
seen this back and forth, and so you've really got some interesting developments from a geopolitical standpoint that I just can't even begin to
yeah.
like.
The
All of them will
relationship, the
have
relationship web we've got going on at the moment is incredibly messy.
it's yes, it's not only trade, it's who's fighting whom. All of these things will influence grain flows, money, where currency trades, like all of these factors will have major influences on US's exports going. Like everyone wants to think it's just pure supply and demand. Well, you're completely ignoring all of the things that happen underneath the surface that influence
Yeah,
how grain and things move. So definitely something we'll be paying attention to. Also, just focusing on grain here, and then we'll call it a day. We are going to hear more about Brazil's crop. A lot of folks have just kind of woke up and realized that Brazil, their second corn crop, has made it through pollination and is working its way towards harvest with a little in the way of disruption. You're going to start to hear more about the bigger crop. Anyone that's been trading cash out of the region or paying attention to what's been going on has already been talking about the fact that we're probably looking at a couple 100 million bushels more of available supply out of Brazil when it comes to corn. A lot of this will probably impact the US export program more in August or September. So the world definitely is very, very grateful about this, simply because we are probably going to exhaust most of our supplies just ahead of harvest out of the US. The world pipeline would be, it'd be a giant sucking sound if we didn't have a decent crop coming out of Brazil. And so it's one of those things, that is a negative influence when it comes to sentiment, but is not necessarily something that is a surprise in the physical side of things. Now, if the opposite were true and we were looking at a poorer crop or 200 million bushels less, it would be hugely explosive. And so it's one of those things where it's just not bullish. And to a certain extent, you could say it's bearish just simply because it's not bullish. But for the most part, it is going to come in a bit larger than what traders were expecting. And that'll be one of those things that weighs a little bit on sentiment here in the short term. US soft red wheat remains the cheapest in the world, but everywhere, everyone's basically like, let's see what happens with new crop. If it's this cheap now, it'll probably get cheaper.
yeah,
Though I am a little nervous about the quality situation and some of these other things. And then in soybeans, the domestic market is exploding. Like we've seen basis firm, 40 cents in some parts of the Western Corn Belt. It definitely looks like we will be tight on available soybean supplies as we work our way into summer. And we're just going to be really closely watching what goes on with biofuel policy, hoping the administration gives us some sort of direction there. Because right now we're exporting the hell out of renewable diesel and all of these other things. But yeah, overall, here we sit. Weather looks like it'll be decent once it dries out here across the Great Lakes. Looks like planting progress will be good. Should be about half planted this afternoon. And Yahoo, yeehaw. I don't know.
yeah.
Whatever.
It's
Giddy
Monday.
up.
It's Monday. Come
Happy
on.
Monday. So yeah, go out with your bad self. Get yourself some, white people tacos for lunch. That's what we call them. It's just plain and bland, I guess. That's what most everyone's gonna do for Cinco de Mayo, I'm sure, in my neighborhood anyway. And so make sure you have a good day, and yeah, we'll see where the market heads.
I echo that. Whatever you're doing, stay safe. We love you lots. Thank you for tuning in as always. Angie, thank you as always for being your magnificent self. And listeners, yeah, we hope to see you all tomorrow. Take care.
Have a good one, guys.